Hello and welcome to the Hurling Show here on Off the Ball. I'm Shane Stapleton. We're live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere you want to get us, offtheball.com as well, of course. I'm joined this week by two fine Offaly men. Will O'Callaghan, how are you doing?
Good, how are things, Shane?
Not too bad at all. And Michael Verney of the Irish Independent.
Good, Shane. Yeah, we're in great form this week. First win of the league. Granted, we have something to be
actually happy to talk about Offaly for once this season.
First of all, we'll give the result. Offaly 4-8, Carlow 1-10. So that's huge for you boys. Just to look at the other games that went ahead at the weekend: Clare 2-11, Limerick 1-14, and then Dublin 13, Laois 11 points as well. So, first of all, actually, just a quick look at the league in terms of what players have impressed you so far this year. The ones that spring to mind for me are Diarmuid Ryan of Clare, Conor Ryan's younger brother as well, who of course was a class player for the Banner in 2013. Shane Golden. I think he's a player that's been in and around the scene for 6 years maybe. Was he part of that under 21 team?
27, 28, at this stage, yeah.
Really having an excellent league, and I thought a couple of games ago, yeah, he's after having a good game there, and then you see him against Limerick and you're like, another good game, and he keeps it going.
Are you trying to butter up Clare supporters ahead of the debate?
Well, look, we don't know which side I'm on yet.
Torrent of abuse he's gotten on really.
Twitter went into meltdown. My mentions have gone nuts ever since I put
and you're absolutely loving it.
Yeah. It cuts me up to see Clare people getting upset. Anyone else stand out for you in the league so far?
I was saying to you, I think before we come on, I've been impressed just with the amount of hurling Aaron Gillane has done this spring. Obviously, he had a big game at the weekend, scoring the 8 points in the freeze, and still crucially important for Limerick. I was reading Colin Key's article, which made a fair point earlier today as well, that Limerick, with no relegation this year in the league, they could have had the temptation to just experiment and mess around. That kind of trap wasn't there for them, and yet they decided to go all out, and they've topped the division. And again, Gillane, despite the fact he's played a lot of hurling, obviously at third level, throughout the Fitzgibbon as well, I think he's been pretty impressive when he's played for Limerick.
Probably 9 games in 6 weeks, I think, as well. And Limerick obviously top of Division 1A, and I think probably wanting to set down a marker. Michael?
Just on Gillane, we talked about that last week. Like, his body seems to enjoy the traffic, and Kylie seems to like playing him in a lot of games. Cathal Mannion's been probably the standout for me from what I've seen. Just he's beautiful ball striker, and they've just got him into more space out around the middle of the field. I think probably maybe looking at something a little different, maybe looking at freeing up possibly Johnny Cohen, possibly to drop back into defence. Maybe Mannion could be David Burke's new kind of partner this year.
Sean Loftus?
Possibly, yeah. They're just kind of been tinkering with their options, yeah. But he always drifts deep anyway, but he's drifted particularly deep from midfield this year and can just carry ball and put it over anywhere inside 100 yards. He's been very good.
We talked about Joseph Cooney not being there as well, so it's going to be crucial for Galway to get a hard-working wing forward who can go 45 to 45. Danny Sutcliffe, we spoke about him last week. He's had an excellent league. The two Bennett brothers, but especially Stephen Bennett, to be honest, you could make a case for either. They've both had excellent leagues, certainly against Dublin. Aidan Walsh for Cork as well. So far, he's been really, really good.
Paddy O'Loughlin is one as well from Limerick, who has kind of come out of nowhere in a certain sense. Like, he's brilliant in the Fitzgibbon for UCC, and a couple of games he's played with Limerick, he's been outstanding as well.
Yeah, he was sweeper at UCC there in the final as well. I got thinking about injuries in hurling, and I'm sure anyone who's played for a number of years, you can't help but get a couple of bad injuries. Lads, anything spring to mind from your own playing days that you had a particularly gruesome injury?
You've had a few, not particularly gruesome. But
yeah, just bad injuries in general. The worst one I ever had was like the simplest injury probably ever. We played Tumivara one night. It was Baltic. You barely feel your hands. One of those kind of nights under lights, and I got a belt in the hand. And about 10 minutes.
Very unlike Toom now.
Very unlike Toom, yeah. Particularly the player in question, it was very unlike him to strike around that area too. But one of our selectors came in with water maybe about 10 minutes later, and he said your hand is bleeding. And I looked down, and the whole nail bed had been taken off the thumb. The whole nail was actually hanging off, and like, it was sore at the time. Then things calmed down then after, and it's just like all that was left was the skin underneath, and it was the most sensitive thing ever. Like, I actually couldn't hurl for about 3 or 4 weeks. Anytime it touched off anything,
you were that windy.
Yeah,
for 3 or 4 weeks.
So the physio had to put this kind of contraption on it to play the next game, and it had to go over my thumb like that, and it was just it's grand anyway because we don't poke the ball in full backline anyway, so it's grand. But I just hand pass with the other hand. But just for something so small, it was just outrageously sensitive. Yeah.
And your days as a nail model were over. Will, did you ever get any slaps when you were young lad?
Yeah, plenty of slaps.
Will, you were wild. I remember you you were wild now. It was up and down like that. You came out more than you got.
I started thinking I probably injured more players than would have taken injuries myself. I remember getting one on the top of the finger as well, where it was just like a massive blood bubble came up over the top of my finger, which is just absolutely horrible when that happens.
Yeah. You get great satisfaction in bursting it.
You do. Eventually, I think it burst about 4 days later, and it was an absolute mess. But the relief that you got that one, I couldn't even hold a pen for a few days afterwards.
It's the one where it feels like it has a pulse, and your finger is actually shaking.
Oh, as if your whole finger's going to explode. Speaking of which, I have a video of I've broken my hand 7 times at this stage. You had to drag that out of me. What a hard man, etc. Only joking. But anyway, I have a video coming up here of a time that I broke my finger in 2013. And the surgeon, like, this is a process that he called pulling, where they tried to massage the bone fragments back into place because, as the surgeon said, your x-ray is so bad that if we tried to open up the surgery, it would explode like a bomb. The whole, like when you saw the x-ray of the finger, it was splintering off in every single direction. And eventually when it healed up 4 or 5 weeks later, it was just like a massive bone. The tip of that finger was actually bigger and heavier than it had been previously. It was very, very weird.
And I presume he's given you no painkillers at that point. You have to be able to feel if it's come back in?
No, he was asking me did I want him, and I obviously said, not a hope, son. Get on with it. And before you ask, of course, I played on in the match.
Folks always take videos. You just never know when you'll get use out of them.
Yeah, actually, to be honest, the surgeon, when I said to the surgeon at the time, do you mind if I take a video of that there? He just looked at me and goes, look at this nut job. I've done that 2 or 3 times. Anyway, I'm joking about all the trying to sound masculine and all that kind of stuff. Just a bit of crack there. And
one of the worst injuries, remember the one we showed last year where the helmet went through the guy's hand in Dublin Club Championship?
Crummy.
Oh, that was brutal, like, yeah.
And that's not the only time that's happened. No, there's been plenty of those. Lads, the game's been called off last weekend. Did it strike you that some of the 1A and 1B games were called off, but nothing beneath that was called off?
It definitely struck me. I put it out. I put it out there on Twitter, and I didn't really know what I was trying to suggest.
Yeah.
But then I kind of just like the 11, like between 2A, B, 3A and 3B, the 11 games went ahead, and they were in geographical locations all around Ireland. Whereas
I was thinking, well, geography-wise, would maybe some of those games have been further north just by the nature of the counties that were involved?
Would have been, of course, and it just to me it just struck me as we probably don't care as much about these games. Just get them done, get them out of the way, and without being smart. And we're probably going to talk about it later. The fact that the geography of where those finals have been played, the A, B, 2A, 2B, and 3A, 3B finals have been played this way, just strikes me as more kind of disrespect. That's kind of what I gathered from those games, to be honest with you.
Well, I got a video from Westmeath, Mayo, the second half of that game, and the conditions there looked as bad as anywhere else.
I bet you they were, It's just, it's not on television, it's not going to be as high profile. I kind of like, just get it played. You know what I mean? That's
short difference, sort of a job. Let's look at the fixtures that are on this weekend. The quarterfinal of the league, the only quarterfinal going ahead, is Laois Limerick. Then round 5 games that have been postponed: Cork against Tipperary, Wexford against Kilkenny, and Waterford against Galway. Before we go any further, as always, we're going to have a look at our GOAT of the week. And because there wasn't too much to pick from, there was no footage of Offaly and Carlow, but I've heard rave reviews about my own clubmate with Coola, Sean Brennan, against Laois. It was his full debut, and there he is, the GOAT of the week. He'd be very, very unhappy now if I didn't give him GOAT of the week. Look at how happy he is in that photograph there.
We've managed to do a great thing. Like, each week we found a different variety of GOAT.
Look, I've been on my house WhatsApp group. I've been doing this for the past couple of years. There is no end of happy goat heads out there.
You're varying the positions, you're varying the goats.
Well, look, it's crucial. I mean, are you going to do it right or are you going to do it wrong? And we had a great one of Peter Hart yesterday as well. For people who saw the Gaelic football show, have a little look at that GOAT of the week, because you know, it was top stuff.
Man proud of his own work over.
Yeah. I just mentioned, because there was talk that the GA decided that this year, if there was going to be a delay in games, as per last year when the weather was particularly poor, that if one game was called off, all would be called off. Now that would actually cause consternation as well. I'm not sure how that would help the issue, because the club month is there, and you want to get. I'm not sure how calling off every game instead of just some games.
Well, it would have been very messy in certain circumstances, because there was a very late pitch inspection around 1:30 or so at Parnell Park. And my first thought was that Offaly and Carlow got the go-ahead to be played. If, say, at that point, Laois knew what they had to do, say if, as it worked out, Offaly beat Carlow, then do Laois play a scratch team and get an advantage from doing that? Do Dublin know that they're playing against a scratch team because of the fact that it's already known permutation-wise? It was kind of weird that it worked out that Limerick topped the group, and that was the only game played in Division 1A. You know, I kind of thought you'd nearly call them all off rather than call them 2 of the 3.
Well, do you know what one of the unintended consequences of it is? If you look at the Cork versus Tipperary game that was called off, So Tipperary just went to Alicante for this week, and I would imagine, I think we've got a photo of them heading away from the airport, Shannon Airport. So obviously the plan was this week that Tipperary were going to have played their final group game. They were going to be 2 weeks away from their next game, whether that was going to be a relegation playoff, which of course is kind of pointless anyway. There is no relegation, but you have to play the fixture, either that or quarter final. So they were, I would imagine, going to do a block of work this week. Everyone is taking work off, and we're going to train really hard this week and probably freshen up next week ahead of when the quarter-final/relegation playoff is. Now it's been thrown out. Can they actually have a heavy work week now? Okay, you could say fair enough, work hard and don't really care too much about how the Cork game goes. But if you work the players really hard all week now, you're risking injury against Cork.
Definitely, and you're risking picking up a knock that could take someone out of the Munster Championship potentially. And I just say as well, that picture of the boys in the airport has done the rounds everywhere, and I shamelessly, another tip man promoted the fact that they're heading off for a week's holidays as well, and Shannon Airport and all this kind of crack. And there's quotes going out from the man in the Shannon Airport director or whoever. We're not putting it up again. Take it down, take it down for God's sake.
We like it for you, Shannon. There's one other game that I didn't mention this weekend, and that's of course the relegation playoff from 1B of Offaly against Carlow. Very close to your hearts, guys. Offaly 4-8, Carlow 1-10. How encouraged are you to see Offaly get the win?
Pretty encouraged. To be honest with you, if you're looking at how they were going to win the game and how they're going to win games in general, it's going to be that sort of 4-8, 3-12, 3-13. Like, we're going to need to get goals because we're not going to put up a... To me, we're not going to put up a 121 or 122 or anything like that. But again, and Will tweeted it, and it's a fair point. And they get a lot of slack. But what Dooley and Joe Bergen have done for Offaly over the last 10 years has been phenomenal. Invariably, they always deliver. It's going to be dark whenever they go. But can I just say as well, and especially with all the lads that haven't committed, there's a fair honour in lads staying around, and particularly those guys who have seen better days. And there's a fair honour in them staying around now, knowing that, you know, silverware is going to be hard got. There's going to be a fair few trimmings, but they stay going. And between the two of them, I think Joe got 2-3 and Shane 2-1 or something along those lines.
One from the bench from Dooley as well.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's very encouraging, and particularly to ground out in really difficult conditions. I believe Ben Keneally, cornerback, was outstanding as well.
He's an excellent player.
Yeah, he's a good player. Not long back from having his appendix out as well. So very encouraging. A funny thing though, when you have to turn around the week after and play the team again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because you're wondering who has the psychological edge, who has the physical edge, who got to learn more.
I think psychology was important that Offaly won for two reasons. They knew before they went to Carlow, if they won because of the home and away situation, they were going to end up playing Carlow at home, which makes that fixture a little bit easier maybe than potentially having to toss and end up maybe going back to play Laois again, when Laois put in a very credible performance again against Dublin at the weekend. Also, I think, look, it was a case of Offaly had a free hit to a certain extent because they knew they were going to be in the relegation final, but they were still playing a Carlow team who had everything to play for. Carlow knew if they won, they had their place in the Division 1 quarter-finals, so it's a very important result. And Joe Bergen said, as Mick has said, you know, after the game, that like the importance for him is to keep Offaly among the top flights, to try and get Offaly back up to Leinster hurling again. That's effectively why he's coming back into play. And we said it a few weeks ago, you know, Offaly are a different team once they get some of these guys back in, like Dooley, like Bergen, maybe Keelan Kiley and a few others that are going to come back into the team, Usheen Kelly, than they were a few weeks back. And maybe where they were rusty and not ready when they played Laois a few weeks ago, maybe they're just coming right at the right time.
The flip side is Carlow missed a couple of penalties, a couple of sitters went in for, a couple of very jammy goals went in for Offaly. I think one went in from like 35 yards, another...
The Cavanagh penalty that went over the bar, if that had gone under at the crucial time, it would have definitely put nerves back in Offaly.
And Keneally got a hook at one stage as well. That was a certain goal too, yeah.
I think another ball was going wide, or the keeper thought it was going wide and it trickled in as well. So are you confident that Offaly will get this done at home at the weekend?
I wouldn't be overly confident. It's a real 50-50 game for me, to be honest with you. I see Offaly are -2 in the handicap, which I think is a bit bizarre based on Carlow's run throughout the league up until this. I don't see more than a score between it, and it could fall either way, to be honest with you.
I think you'd be hopeful at home.
Yeah,
like that would be the one thing that would probably swing it ever so slightly.
Whether
he can make his own joke about
it is another story.
Yeah, you're going to go there again.
I'll let him make that joke. I saw a lot of people last week.
No joke.
Who were saying, why not bring Carlow to Burr and give Offaly every advantage going into that playoff game? But I would think Tullamore, Offaly should be able to get the job done. But again, they're going to be reliant, I would say, on goals, and maybe Carlow can... If Carlow are a lot tighter defensively and don't give away goals this weekend, it's going to be extremely tight.
Their cards are marked now, that's the only thing. And you'd imagine Dooley and Bergen would get special treatment to some extent. So it'll be interesting. It's going to be very tight.
We've got plenty of Limerick coming up on the show as well, and Clare, of course, as I said, Twitter has gone into meltdown ever since we said that we're going to do a debate discussing whether or not 2013 was a fluke All-Ireland for Clare. Yeah, that's gone down pretty well so far. So we will get talking about those counties in a little while, but just looking at the structure, and I know the league is changing, but the idea that Laois could go through and the Munster champions Cork might not go through to the quarterfinals of the league, it's silly, isn't it?
Well, the two divisions should be more balanced once the league gets restructured than it is now. I mean, for the last few years, we've had it very typically 3 very strong teams in Division 1B typically, and then 3 teams who are fighting a mini league to decide 1 into the quarterfinals and 2 into a relegation playoff. And I can't imagine that cycle is really going to change. I mean, whoever comes up, whether it be Westmeath or Kerry, into Division 1 second flight for next year, are still going to be fighting it out with either Carlow, Laois or Offaly, who's going to finish in the bottom 3 places in that division realistically.
It is a mad scenario though when, and Martin Bretney always says this because he's a stickler for structures and rules and things like that, that the 10th best team in the league gets into the quarter-final. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? The top 6, and then you have the 4th in Division 1B, which is a bit of a mad scenario.
Yeah. If you look at Laois then, if we just focus on them for a minute, they're around your neck of the woods, neighbours to Offaly. I just wonder, like, what do you take from that game against Dublin? 13 points to 11, they've lost the game, horrendous conditions, but from what I've heard, they actually were working the ball really well through the lines, knew when to go direct, runners off the shoulder, had a threat up front as well. And this despite being down players this year as well.
Yeah, and they didn't help themselves by, Trey Dwyer getting himself sent off in the second half of that game as
well.
What
is it about, and I think this is something that you would see with the likes of Carlow, Offaly and Laois, time and time again, there's red cards. Is there any common denominator? Is it like we're getting beaten by a stronger team and just frustration?
They take a lot of fouls, which is the other thing as well. I get a lot of 2 yellow card situations with those counties because when they're going up against teams who are a little bit stronger. Let's remember Dublin have had a really good campaign in Division 1B this year. You're going to have situations where guys are taking fouls, maybe then they lash out in frustration to pick up a second yellow as well. And on a cold day where Laois were actually ahead for quite a bit of that game, when you go down to 14 men, it's amazing how Dublin took absolute control at that stage and used the extra man quite well to finish the game out.
What I saw of Laois against Offaly, I was very impressed. A couple of new players maybe that I hadn't seen much of apart from club action. Aaron Dunphy, Boris Kilcotton, wing forward, very good. He seems to get 3 or 4 points a game. There's a fella at cornerback, Donncha Hartnett. He's an unbelievably tight cornerback. Whoever he's marking invariably just doesn't seem to have an effect in the game. And Mark Kavanagh up front, he's a lovely left-handed forward as well. So while they've lost guys, they seem to have brought through a few guys that have made a pretty instant impact. I'm sure they've been hovering around there for a while, but they have made a big impact on the team this year.
It's great to see Kavanagh back as well, because I remember when Laois had a very good minor team and Kavanagh was the main scorer in that team, both taking frees and very good from play. He then picked up a knee injury, missed quite a bit of hurling, wasn't back that long, and then injured his knee again. So he's missed quite a bit of action because of injuries. And like when he's on song, and he was for a final for Downey Earl a few years ago as well, like he's as good nearly as any forward that Laois have, and he's taken over the slack that maybe Ross King would have been taking the frees on that team, and he takes the ones a bit further out. Picky Mara will take them a bit closer in, and Kavanagh definitely fit and firing is a big find for Eddie Brennan this year. Just
one score from play in the second half as well. And we are talking about the positives of that loss to Dublin, but again, is it another moral victory when...
Well, Eddie Brennan said that after the game as well. He was saying that was the one killer. It's great that we hurled well for quite a bit of the game, but he was thinking we would have liked to got a draw at least, so that we're the reason we're in the quarterfinals, not because another team failed to win. And this happens a few times with Laois. I mean, you remember they put in good performances against Clare and Galway in the championship and then ran out of steam during matches. I think it really comes down to now for Laois, the next step for them is to try and close them out, and I actually think the McDonagh Cup is going to be ridiculously tight this summer, and
very tight.
If Westmeath were to win Division 2A this weekend against Kerry in that final, I kind of wonder if Westmeath might take momentum going into the summer as well.
They'll take a lot of momentum, yeah.
I'd love to see the Joe McDonagh Cup on TV as well.
It should be.
Yeah.
Like, without being smart, last year, and I don't mean to be hard, like last year it might as well not happened. Nobody saw anything that went on. Every game, I think there was definitely no more than 4 points between any of the teams on average anyway in a given game, and we just didn't see any of it.
The Munster final and the Joe McDonagh final were on at the same time as well.
That's right, yeah.
I was in Croke Park for, I presume it was the Leinster final that day, and I was kind of going inside into the press box to have a look at Clare and then back out, because I think there was a 15-minute delay in between one starting and then the other, and I was trying to get both.
Because I remember hearing when the Joe McDonagh was announced, and again, like, this just goes through, we're still waiting for the full fixtures for the Joe McDonagh for this year. They're not even settled. They're down as the weekend of whatever. I remember before the Master fixtures came out last year, they said Joe McDonagh final is going to be on before the Leinster final, Croke Park. I thought in theory that's a great idea, and then the Master fixtures comes out and it shows the Munster and Leinster finals are on the same day, and the minute you saw that, you're thinking all attention is going towards that. I mean, you would imagine surely if the interest isn't there, say from RTE to broadcast the Joe McDonagh Cup, you then option it out to TG Carr to let them
imagine how big that would be if TG Carr got their hands on it, like, and got their hands on some of the other games in the build up to it as well, maybe a couple of tighter games involving the teams that you expect to be in the final as well. It just, that's all, and all that, just chatting to all those players, and it's similar with all the other divisions as well, they just want a bit more recognition, a bit more coverage. They are, like, they're brilliant games.
You even look at the Fitzgibbon Cup and the Sigerson Cup. You had Electric Ireland were broadcasting online a lot of those games.
But only forward, like.
And then TG Carr.
Yeah, but only forward people wouldn't have known it was going on, barely.
Yeah. And you see what make a big difference as well with GA Go's deal at the moment as well. They're putting out quite a few clips on Twitter as well. So say if they were being streamed live on TG Carr, you can imagine if, I don't know, Mark Kavanagh gets a great score, Laois against Kerry, and straight away it ends up online, people start to look at kind of the second flight hurling a bit more. I think outside of Division 1, Joe Quaid was saying this week, the Westmeath manager, like, hurling is effectively forgotten about. Yeah. And even you made the point about, and I think it was on the back of the Wicklow captain this week, was saying that, you know, it's a joke that these games are played in the venues that they're played in, and that's no offence to the Connacht Centre of Excellence or Navan or Ennis or whatever else.
Inniskeen, with all due respect to Patrick Kavanagh, the Wicklow boys are going up to Inniskeen to play a league final, which is just bizarre as well, you know.
Well, actually, we might as well stick to this while we're talking about it, because if you look at where the hurling league finals are set for this year, now there's a tweet that we're going to put up on the screen there in a second, which I'll read. But if you look at where the hurling league finals are set for this year, football is going to be all in Croke Park, all 4 divisions. The hurling this year, Division 2A is going to be in Ennis, Division 2B is going to be in Inniskeen, 3A is in Navan, 3B is in Bacon, which is the Connacht Centre of Excellence as well. Is that unfair, or the fact that the lower tier hurling championships play their finals at Croke Park, does that mean it's fair enough, you are getting your chance to play at Croke Park?
I can't understand why they don't just make a weekend out of it. I think I tweeted back when that kind of exchange was happening last weekend. Like, it's amazing, football has Croke Park for the 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. This year the hurling final is going to have to compete with those finals as well, because the way it's pushed back, the Division 1 final. But why can't the lower finals all be set for Semple Stadium, Nolan Park? Not even if it's not Croke Park, bring it to a hurling stadium and make a weekend out of it. Have the 2B and 2A finals on one day, and have, say, the Division 3 final, you know, maybe have it as a triple header, but make an actual occasion out of it and let these teams play somewhere decent.
Well, let's look at the tweet. We'll have it up on screen here. It's from GA Club and County Tips. Excellent point made by Wicklow captain and Glenealy clubman Warren Kavanagh. Wicklow and Derry will meet again next week in the Division 2B final, not in Croke Park, though, yet all football league finals will be played there, which is exactly the point we're making all along. And
like, I've been to Division 4 and Division 3 finals. I remember a few years back I went to, I'm going to say, Offaly and Limerick were involved in the night. Limerick were in the, and it was the same night as Munster Rugby were playing, just as it worked out. Munster were playing a Heineken Cup quarter final. There was nobody in Croke Park, maybe less than 1,000 people. So you're looking at a kind of a lost leader by opening up Croke Park for the night anyway. So why not open up Croke Park to the hurling finals and say, here, you've played as hard as any other player throughout the spring, you're getting the chance to actually play your final here, and don't even have to wed it to Croke Park necessarily. There are venues that might be more suitable, like the Semple Stadium, Nolan Park. Play them there and have all 3 of them and make an occasion.
Without being smart, for hurling finals, like, lads would have no crib with going to Thurles. Like, it's not, if anything, it's as much of a plus as going to Croke Park playing a hurling final in Thurles.
It's unforgettable playing in venues like that. I'm sure some of your best days with Offaly were out in those big
and
stadiums.
Worst.
What was your worst day playing for Offaly?
Very simple. Thurles. I only played in Thurles once, a competitive match. I ran around like a headless chicken after John Milan for 25 minutes and then was given the curdy.
What did he score?
He only scored a point, but he was just... Do you know, like when you're playing a game and maybe the ball stays away from you sometimes for the first 10 minutes and it's grand and you get to
job.
10 seconds, ball was gone into him, I slipped, he put it over the bar and you're just like, oh no. Oh no.
His dander was up.
Yeah. And like, he was so fast as well. Like, if you weren't on your game, if he was getting the ball first before you're in awful trouble. Do you know what I mean? And I won't mind, I joke about it the whole time now. But he always says, you weren't too bad. And he just tries to build me up 11 years later. Like.
Let's talk about David Fitzgerald of Clare, the wing back last weekend. A couple of times it felt that he got a slap on the head, but it was almost as if he exaggerated too much. And I don't like necessarily calling lads out, but I think, you know, that's not how hurling is supposed to be, exaggerating a blow to the head a little bit, because as soon as you start accepting it, you go in the direction of soccer whereby, you know, Rivaldo's down on the ground because a ball hit him in the knee and he's holding his head on the ground. And I'm not necessarily just trying to single out David Fitzgerald, but I just didn't like it. And I put a tweet out there, and it didn't necessarily go down well with everyone. I said, is David Fitzgerald okay after those slaps to the head? Come on now, David. And then Joe McKeown, who I believe is one of his own clubmen from Inagh tagged in David, and then goes, a lot of criticism coming here, especially from a Johnny Jump Up who left Borrisoleigh for the bright lights of Coola. # opinionated gimp.
Can we get that trending? Opinionated gimp.
Well, do you know who we have joining us on the line at the moment is Limerick legend Ciarán Carey. Ciarán, how are you doing?
I'm good, Shane. And Shane, to be fair to you, you were never one to give an old tip in the head either, sure weren't?
No, never at all, never at all. What did you make of that? Did you think he overdid it going down? Like, I mean, I presume you watched the game being a staunch Limerick man.
I did, but sure, come here, the beauty about the game of hurling, you know, when the 30 players cross the line, there's no place to hide, and everything is exposed and everything is highlighted. And yeah, listen, at the end of the day, it's a bit much like, at the end of the day, a tip in the head. You can see exaggerated straight away, but unfortunately that's the way it's gone. I believe they're possibly watching too much matches today, or too much European Champions League.
Do you think that? Do you think players aren't quite made of the same stuff as they were before, where you had no helmets and you were going out there with blood dripping down your head and you didn't care?
Yeah, but I suppose there were different times now. But, like, you know, if you watch the soccer the way it's gone, you know, they're going out with the boots, names in the boots, and probably getting a few pounds for it. And it's creeping into in the hurling and the antique that goes on there. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you know, if you're a half-back or a defender, you know, you're there to win the ball, primary possession, and not to be turning yourself inside out from getting a tip. But to be fair, you know, I was at 5 league games this year, and I think actually it was the Cork and Limerick game, really, where I saw the first proper bit of pulling on a high ball, where I saw 2 hurleys broken. Up until then, there was no hurley broken at all.
Ciarán, does Aaron Gillan's kind of style of play, and maybe sometimes where he swings out the hurl a small bit, does it lend itself to maybe these type of things possibly happening as well?
Well, at the end of the day, Aaron Gillan is a forward, right? And, you know, he is going to be closely monitored for a full hour. So he is going to use tactically or every tool in his toolbox to avoid getting a belt, number 1, or number 2, more importantly, winning primary possession. And if Aaron Hurley is going slightly left or slightly low or slightly high, you know, there's a man dressed in black with a whistle, and it's up to him really to kind of determine whether it's a free or not a free. But to be fair, like, Aaron tends to come, and actually this is very naivety in defenders, Aaron tends to come from behind the cornerback. Yeah. Whereas obviously he's going to have advantage straight away there. Whereas if the cornerback is behind Aaron, it's irrelevant where he puts his hurl. He's kind of sitting upright, and it's a matter of a kind of anticipating it then and reading it quicker before Aaron. You
know, last year, Ciarán, Aaron was a bit of a bolt from the blue and he took the country by storm. Do you think this year teams are going to be kind of looking for him a little bit more? They're going to realise he likes to catch the ball from behind. They're possibly going to give him a bit more of the treatment, if I can call it that way euphemistically. What's he going to need to do in 2019 to be as good as 2018?
Well, to be fair now, and I'm not being biased here on this, he's the best player in view I've seen in the league up to this, so he just needs to maintain what he's doing, because the cornerbacks haven't been copped yet.
And do you think that other teams will start to look at the ball being fed into Aaron Gillan? Because if I'm to just put it up on the tactics board here, and I'm sure you know the sort of ball I'm talking about, Ciarán, irrespective of whether you can see it or not, but there's probably a 2-man inside line and the ball has been fed just to the side of the D, and he's coming out and he's just hitting it over on the loop. So it seems to be just a very easy process, surely for him, if Limerick get the right ball in. But surely the opposition are going to start trying to figure out a way, well, how do we stop that ball going into Aaron Gillan?
Yeah, well, you know, I was watching, the first game was Wexford, right? Obviously, it was a poor game, and it was the first game for both teams, so, you know, a bit rusty, and first league game and getting out of the way. And there was one stage there in the second half, right, about 5 minutes into the second half, I just looked down at Aaron Gillan, and Aaron was there on his own with a Wexford defender and the goalkeeper behind him, and the nearest player then was at the opposite 65. So it was actually the first time I've seen it in the game of hurling. I obviously saw it in football the last number of years, because that's the way it's gone tactically. And, you know, but sure, if Limerick can manifest that and the opposition are falling into that trap, sure, it's gold for Aaron all day long. Now, the one team that didn't do it, and Aaron Gillane wasn't playing, unfortunately, because he was tied up in Fitzgibbon Cup, was Cork in the Gaelic round. So it would have been interesting if he was there that day, because, you know, the Cork defenders were set up perfect to just hold their shape, and, you know, you hadn't 5, you hadn't 7, kind of running back to Limerick half back line, watching 10 and 12. So they were set up, and as it turned out, they got a result, and that was a huge part of them getting the result. They just set up defensively and kept their shape.
Limerick are really set up for a league title this year. If you consider the fact that all the other teams have had their games postponed, they're going to play this weekend, and they're going to continue playing the quarter-final, semi-final and final after that, whereas Limerick got to play their game at the weekend. They're going to play Laois and win this weekend. They'll have a week off, and where other teams won't. So it is kind of set up for Limerick.
Yeah, perfect. You couldn't have written the script any better from, really. As you rightly pointed out, you know, game this weekend, bit of a break, and, you know, whoever comes. And, you know, up until this point, it has been gone pretty well. You know, Tipperary, they kind of just bullied them off the field and won convincingly. And obviously Liam Sheedy took a few little moves after that. He added aim and a shade to it. And, you know, the Kilkenny game, the first half was very enjoyable. First 30 minutes was nip and tuck, nice and close. 2 goals for half time. Game over. Limerick just dominated them and bullied them in the second half. Usually when Kilkenny would be known for coming out with most rucks, with this Limerick team, with the power and the strength to have, they're not even achieving that. So I'd imagine for any team really, Shane, to have any chance with Limerick, you need to go back to simplicity and have your homework done, because if you haven't your homework done, you're actually wasting your time. Yeah,
Limerick come in with the confidence this year of knowing that they can win in All-Ireland. So that's in the bank already, and that confidence as well. They also, for the league this year, compared to last year, have all the Napirshick players available. So he's picking from, you know, a greater pool of talent this year as well, John Kiley. What have you seen different from Limerick last year compared to this year? Because just touching back on before the All-Ireland last year, you were very confident that Limerick would win by 5 or 6 points against Galway.
I was actually, and possibly actually, to be fair, it could have very easily been a small bit more. Only for the last 5 or 6 minutes, a bit of a run Galway had. It was only in the dying moments of the game, 5 minutes, as I said. Yeah, they're definitely, you know, everybody knows now in the hurling industry that Limerick have a massive squad. Okay, and I believe myself personally, if they're going to have longevity, meaning a strong run this year, they're going to have to sprinkle in 3 more players, possibly new players. And Conor Boylan has already stood up for me. Robbie Hanley, they're trying him. Barry Murphy also from Doon isn't getting much game time, but anytime he's coming on, he's actually even taking a few frees. But okay, Shane Dowling was the free taker, Aaron Gillane is now, and this guy here. So they're effectively 3 free takers, if you like. But the one thing I saw different this year, I saw it against Tipperary and I saw it against Kilkenny. Both second halves playing against the wind, they tend to have a new style and a new way of playing as well. So in fairness, they're developing what they already have. And, you know, some counties out there, they're finding it hard to see what they're coming with, number one. Now, if they bring 2 or 3 more strategies into it, they're going to a different level again.
Ciarán, how important do you think it is for Limerick to even make a further statement even on last August if they were to win the league? Like, it would kind of cement the fact that people are, I know Jackie Tyrrell doesn't think about that, they're the team that are there to be, basically, there to be knocked off their perch. If they were to win the league, that would be a big statement for them, not just for this year, but for the next few years.
Yeah, it would and it wouldn't. Like, really, you know, I wouldn't see the league being the be-all and end-all if they didn't win it this year. I think even how they've gone about their business up until now, not even having gone full strength yet with the squad that they had, the team they had last year. So I think actually they're sending out little messages every game that they go out, that they've gone out so far. I thought the fashion that dealt with Tipperary and Kilkenny was superb. You know, obviously Cork and Galway are going to shove it on to Limerick because they're very good players. And for Cork, really, defensively is their weakness. They're after finding 2 crackers, Steve MacDonald, who was there, and the other guy that stands out to me outside Arnold Glenn is Tim O'Mahony, the centre-back. So Cork are nibbling at players too. But to answer your question, yeah, it wouldn't be the be-all and end-all, but for these guys now that they've a taste of an All-Ireland medal, I think they could be smelling the opportunity having a National League medal in their back pocket. So I have a funny feeling they could be going for it.
Is there any worry, Ciarán? There hasn't been a roadblock or any kind of anything really that's upset them yet. How do you think they'd deal with, say, a 5 or 6 point defeat or something like that if it did come along? Tip were flying, we'll say, 2 years ago before that second half league final against Galway. How do you think this Limerick crop would deal with a big setback if it comes their way in the next couple of months?
Well, that will only happen really if the team that they're meeting have their homework done and have the same quality of players. And, you know, Cork, in fairness, have a set of 6 forwards that could hurt any team, really, to be fair. And, yeah, certainly it will be new territory for them. And how will they bounce back from that? Only time will tell. And the first 20 minutes against Cork, it was kind of looking like that for a while. Cork came out of the blocks extremely quick, and they were dominating Limerick for 20 minutes. Limerick gathered their composure, came back a small bit, but for the finish, Cork actually won the game. And as poor and all as Limerick were on the day, probably going about 60%, they were still in a goal net, and Cork were flying on the day.
Ciarán, in the past, Austin Gleeson has talked about the pressure that he felt the year after getting a hurler of the year. Your nephew Cian Lynch won it last year. Have you sensed in any way, shape or form that there's a lot of pressure being put on him, that there's any chance that that the crown mightn't sit easily on his head?
No, I wouldn't actually. I suppose really, and Austin Gleeson and Cian, okay, 2 young guys, and I can actually identify and experience that myself. But like when you set an out standard for yourself at inter-county level at a young age, okay, you know, it's in there really lies the tests. If you're going to maintain that, number one, and number two, how long are you going to maintain it? And that's the test really of a real thoroughbred.
Yeah, and then just for the Munster Championship this year, it looks like a bear pit this year. Now that Waterford have home, they're going to have their games at home in Walsh Park as well. Tipperary have Liam Sheedy in this year. The results haven't been perfect, but they're, I would say, signs of progress. We know Cork, Clare and Limerick are all very strong. Only 3 of those can get through. Who do you think are most likely?
Of what I've seen during the league campaign, the 2 best teams I've seen really have been Limerick and Cork. Yeah.
And who else to get through then?
I'd fancy Clare, being honest with you.
Right, okay.
Looking at Tipperary against Limerick, to be fair, they looked very professional. They actually looked very physically fit. Good few guys had lost a few pounds. So if the Eamon O'Shea factor, bringing him in, if it's going to improve them tactically, you would have to throw him in the mix. But that's an if. I haven't seen it yet, so it's early days. Like Clare and Limerick and Cork will definitely be in the mix.
And you spoke about Eamon O'Shea coming back in with Tipperary there. You've been on a coaching panel before as well with Limerick. What do you make of bringing in someone like this later in the year and maybe not on a full-time basis?
Did you pose that question to your 2 Offaly friends as well? You did?
Yes.
Or come here, are you waiting for Ciarán to spice it up a small little bit? Yeah, to be fair, listen, the bottom line here is you have to call it as you see it. If I was Tommy Dunn, I'd be definitely scratching my head and saying, right, what's going on here? But it isn't the ideal scenario. And I suppose Owen Kelly's name would have been branded for a good number of weeks as well before he actually put his management team in. So it doesn't sit right to be doing that at this time of the year. So only time will tell if there's going to be consequences to that move or not. No, but to be fair, Liam Sheedy, you know, he's a very professional guy, and he'll gloss over that and he'll manage his own setup. But there's certain areas that he won't be able to manage. But only time will tell, really.
I'd imagine that was something that was discussed with the lads before the year began, or the prospect of bringing O'Shea in, because it definitely would have been a big, as Ciarán says, it definitely would have been a big bolt from the blue to just spring it during the year, because it does kind of undermine maybe your role or responsibility. So I'd imagine it would have been mooted long before it happened. I would imagine so anyway.
Yeah, you would imagine, and if it wasn't, then obviously the consequences in time will highlight itself in match time. Yeah, it was a strange one, but to be fair to him, hats off to him that he could see that, okay, I have guys around me, but I might need something else. That's brilliant, Ciarán. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure we'll chat to you again soon. Okay, Shane, good to talk to you. Mind yourself. All the best, all the best. Bye. There was a couple of, just to go back to that David Fitzgerald thing as well, there was a couple of more replies as well. Joe McKeown obviously went for me 2-footed, and fair enough, he's going to defend his own man. And it's nothing personal with David Fitzgerald either, it's just that happened to be... Has anyone outside of Clare had a pop? No. There's a couple of tweets coming up here actually. Maybe a couple of them are from outside Clare. I think they're coming up on screen just now because I can't remember them offhand. Yeah, so many crying Clare fans here, it's laughable. So that's obviously the people crying. He should have been booked for diving is what someone else said. So I do think it's a case of lads saw what Galan did last year and maybe think he's a tad petulant, or there's a possibility that this could happen, and they're
accentuating basically if something happens they're over exaggerating, but like it was too very obvious. I thought like he went to the ground very, very easily. It didn't look right now to me.
And I think we've got one more graphic coming up here. Yeah, Clare should take up wrestling full time and leave the hurling to the artists. And then at Twice as Nice 97, who's constantly having pops at me, clearly from Clare, he must have spent too much time watching Paddy Maher's decapitation by Tony Kelly and got led astray.
The funny thing about the Paddy's one was comical though, in the sense it was a big tackle. He rolled back into a backward roll and stayed there for about 10 seconds until someone pushed him back neutral.
Yeah, I think Paddy might have been okay after as well. He's big enough and he's bold enough to take hits like that. We've got a video coming up from another guy. We just spoke about Eamon O'Shea coming back into the Tipperary setup. Ciarán Donaghy, who's part of the Off the Ball football analysis team now, he joined Joe on Monday night's show on Off the Ball to talk about joining the backroom team for the Galway hurlers.
Has anything struck you in broad terms? I guess, you know, you've been very familiar with football, inter-county football environments. Anything about the way the hurlers are going about their business that struck you?
No, obviously, look, they're different games. Obviously, I would have been a massive hurling fan my whole life. So, you know, been to a lot of games and watched a lot of games. And I suppose since I've been with them in the amount of footage I've watched in them, I've an even keener understanding of obviously how fast the game is, but certain movements and certain patterns that are going on between teams is quite interesting to me. And obviously doing a lot of work with the management team and kind of seeing is there anything we can look to exploit. So yeah, it's obviously all new. And yeah, I was nervous obviously the first time being in with the lads, because you know it's to get it from their perspective as well. You know, I was very keen to kind of stress that if anything I come up with is doesn't make sense, to let me know. But yeah, just, you know, if I can be a sounding board for any of the younger players in the squad or anybody that's struggling. I think I've, through my years with Kerry and even with the basketball, I've experienced all types of playing, trying to get on a team, playing a starring role in a team, being dropped off a team, being a sub that couldn't get a game. Yeah. So I think I have all them kind of angles covered, and any bit of advice that I can give any younger player will be I'll give it, and what they do with it then it'll be their own call.
Unbelievable goal lampshade behind him there as well, not to mention
it's a nice gaff.
It looks like a castle.
Some All-Star awards in the bottom right corner of the screen as well for those who want to rewind back and have a look later on. Right, here comes the Clare discussion. Was 2013 a fluke? Now I just put out the tweet earlier on that we were going to debate this, and people have gone in heavy. One person, Clare senior hurlers, replying with the song from Frank Sinatra, "They Can't Take That Away From Me." So that was one that came in. We had a lot of people oh yeah, Derek Lynch, a journalist, "It's an absolute load of rubbish is what it is." Another one, Maura Trassany Callig from this parish as well. "You can't call 2013 a fluke. Nobody wins in All-Ireland by fluke." Next one then is a video from Richard Chambers where it's basically just complete confusion head gif. So he's not happy with it either. Larry Wilkins, "The Clare team now is much better than the one in 2013. Both finalists had never been seen since neither them nor Cork. That shows how poor that final was. Nobody near Tip or Kilkenny during that era." So that's about that.
You're one supporter in the, 200 or so tweets.
Yeah, it went well. Like, a lot of tweet activity there as well, mate. Happy enough with that.
I think your emotive language is the main problem here, but anyway.
Well, look, you take it away now.
Find out now.
Yeah, you're the judge and the jury here now.
So I have to be part of the judging panel again. Shane Stapleton's on a horrific run at this stage. He won week 1, and you've lost, 4 in a row since?
3 in a row.
3 in a row.
He's in hell right now.
Yeah, so he's going for a Kilkenny 4 in a row on this one. Basically, what we're going to debate this time around is whether Clare's 2013 All-Ireland success can be considered a fluke or not. Michael Verney won the toss to go first, and you're going to be arguing that it wasn't a fluke.
Okay.
All right, so let's get the clock up and ready. Michael Verney, tell us why 2013 was a deserved All-Ireland success for Clare.
Well, the definition of a fluke is something where a lot of things kind of conspire to work in one's favour, and it's a kind of a one-off kind of a thing. This was not one-off. Clare totally dominated Limerick in the semi-final, dominated Cork the first day, and were unlucky to only get a draw and then dominated in the second game. They played a completely different style of hurling that we hadn't seen up until that. Played the sweeper mostly throughout the year, varied with it on and off throughout the final. To say a game or an All-Ireland win was a fluke, I don't think, like Offaly winning in 81 where they only had to win 3 games and beat Laois, Wexford and Galway is more of a fluke than that. Clare had to beat some serious teams, fair enough. Tip and Kilkenny weren't there. They beat each other basically, and Cork beat Kilkenny. But to say it's a fluke is mad. Like some of the best players that we've seen of this generation, the Tony Kellys, David McInerney's, these guys are not like one-hit wonders. And fair enough, they mightn't have delivered from 2014 to 2017. They were underachievers, branded underachievers because they had the talent to do better. They'd already won All-Ireland, and I think this Clare team will win another All-Ireland.
All right. I'm kind of liking the tapas bar music we've introduced in the background as well.
It makes me want to dance.
It sounds like it could be from Kieran Donaghy's house. Anyway, go on. You're going to argue that it was a fluke, and that's the wording you have to argue this one as well. Why Shane Stapleton?
If only Stephen Moylan had rolled that sideline into the corner flag, we'd be talking about 22 years since Clare won an All-Ireland. Before that 2013, Clare had done nothing. Their 2012 season lasted just 28 days, which was just 14% of their year as well, so waste of time before that. Davy was in charge for 5 seasons and left them in a better place for sure, but 60% of his championship wins were in that one season. 6 of his 10 wins, championship wins with Clare. So basically it was that season and nothing else happened, which for me makes it the odd one out, which makes it a fluke. They didn't beat any of the big hitters to win it along the way. Tip and Kilkenny were both knocked out in the back door, so Clare didn't beat either of those. The Podge interview in 2014 when he was reflecting on 2014, like last year was a flop obviously from a Clare hurling point of view. He said it. 1991, Aidan Ryan of Tipperary said we were playing for 2 All-Irelands against Kilkenny in that final because we'd beaten Antrim in 1989, and I know people will say Tip won it in 2010 and didn't repeat it, but they won 6 of 9 Munsters. They were in All-Ireland finals 5 times. Clare are not regular challenges for Liam McCarthy. 2013 was one of only 3 times in 12 seasons they haven't got as far as Croke Park, and most of their team from 2013 is gone. So there is no way that team can ever. That team can't even back it up. It's too late now.
Go on. Was it an aberration of a year then from Clare? That's the argument he's making.
Number one, he said he said that they didn't beat any big hitters. The 3 traditional powerhouses in hurling obviously are Tip, Kilkenny and Cork. They beat Cork in the final, having dominated in the first day and nearly been robbed at the death.
That Cork team were at nothing around then.
We're talking, you said they beat no big hitters.
Yeah, Cork weren't a big hitter.
Is this my 30 seconds or is he allowed to come back?
So then
no, we're done with the seconds.
Are we defining the big hitters then as only Tip and Kilkenny?
in that era, because they were constantly getting to All-Ireland finals and they were constantly winning their provinces, whereas Cork were constantly doing nothing. And Clare were constantly doing nothing. If you look at those 13 seasons, 2006, did Clare get as far as Croke Park? No. They got to it in 2007, quarter-final, no 2008, no 2009. Phase 2 qualifier happened to be in Croker in 2010, so that's a no for me. 2011, no Croke Park. 2012,
okay, grand. A fluke.
14, 15, 16, 17.
A fluke would be like a lucky goal at the end, or some
they just happened to slip in a year when Tip and Kilkenny weren't doing it,
or something like that. Well, this was not a fluke.
Is this not the ultimate in whataboutery though? Just because Clare got the run, they got to the final, you're punishing the legacy of their success just due to that.
But the thing is, it was an aberration because they never did it for the years before, they never did it for the years after. They happened to just slip into the gap when Tip. That's a different team now. That's a different team.
It's a similar team. The mainstays of the team are still there.
Well, the teams that are players that are there, David McInerney, Patrick O'Connor, Colin Galvin, John Conlon, Tony Kelly.
They're best players.
I know, but half of that team is gone, so you can't say it's the same team. And people who say, well, look at Tip in 2016. Well, yeah, they got to 2 finals in 2014. And the team in 2010, well, they got to the final in 2009, 11, semi-final in 12. Like, they were constantly challenging and won 6 Munsters in 9 years. So it's not like with like. Clare did it once and they did nothing around it.
But again, isn't the argument for a fluke on this one that Clare weren't the best team that year and somehow they got favourable decisions or luck in big games?
They got no luck in the drawn game, you have to remember.
Yeah, against Limerick as well. Limerick, like Declan Hannon said, it was his darkest day ever at Croke Park. He missed a lot of frees in the first half. Dowling came on then and started scoring them. But Limerick missed 1-5 of 1-6 in the first few minutes as well, in the first 11 minutes.
That happens in loads of games. But Clare won convincingly that day.
But the point is, they got in an off year. Because Tip weren't there, Kilkenny obviously were dominant, weren't there either. And they didn't actually beat the big hitters of the year.
Coming in an off year is not a fluke though. It's a sign of opportunism.
Right. I would say fair enough, yeah, it wasn't a fluke if they had actually challenged in any of the years around it. But they didn't challenge for 5 years before and 5 years after.
The record since hasn't been good, but as I said, they've been underachieving since. That would say, everyone says Clare, serial underachievers last 4 or 5 years. That gives the impression that they have an awful lot of ability, which they do, and which they showed in 2013, haven't always showed it since, showed it last year, and are likely to show it again this year.
Right. Likely.
Finish it out then, in terms of this, right? As he's argued there now, they set a bar in 2013, that's the bar that's argued against that. They obviously had to set a pretty high bar if they're considered to be underachievers since.
They have done nothing either side of it. It's too late for that team to back it up. They
won a 2016 league, no? League. The second biggest competition?
League is league.
I knew he was going to say league is league.
Who talks about the league? I mean, they did nothing in Championship. I listed out the years that they didn't get to Croke Park. 10 of 13 years they didn't even get to Croke Park, and 2 of those weren't even All-Ireland semi-finals.
Your decision, Will.
Yeah. I actually think Shane Stapleton argued this out a lot better than I expected. He took a very hard debate on. Let's give
or the W. Give me back the title. Where's that belt? Oh, here we go. Jeez,
Andy Lee's belt is back out again with the sheepskin.
I predict a riot.
I predict Shane Stapleton will never be welcome west of the border and into Clare ever again.
Deservedly so. Jeez,
but he argued well today.
I did argue well. You were at a little thing called nothing right there. Unless you've anything else to add, I think that's about the height of it. We've it all said, have we?
Yeah. I think we were talking about the lower finals. I think if anyone is looking for some hurling maybe to go along to between 2 teams this Sunday, I actually think Westmeath and Kerry is going to be a really good final. That Division 2A final. Kerry have been free scoring throughout the league so far. Westmeath have gone unbeaten through to here, won the Keogh Cup as well. So they're moving quite well. And despite losing Niall O'Brien, Westmeath look as good as they did last year. And they could maybe be in Carlow's position, but for 2 games against Carlow as it worked last year, lost the Division 2A final, lost the Joe McDonagh Cup final as well. I think they are the best of the rest. But O'Sullivan and Kerry, they've been talking this week about how important it is for them to win, to try and maybe build on some of their progress that they had a few years ago when they won the Christie Ring. I actually think that's going to be a cracker of a game, and it could be a really high scoring game. Kerry have been involved in some of the most interesting matches I've watched in recent years. I remember them and Laois just went at each other a couple of years ago and shot the lights out. And I think if anyone is around Ennis and wants just a game of hurling to go along to, if they're not going to Division 1 games, that could be a really good final.
It's a huge game for Westmeath after losing the 2A final last year and then getting beaten in the Joe McDonagh final as well. Like, they'd be sick if they didn't get up to 1B.
I think I was saying it's more than 20 years since Westmeath have hurled in Division 1 as well. They've always kind of flirted around that Division 2A territory. And in many ways, I suppose, with the door closing, with the restructure of Division 1 as well, it's really important to be in the top 2 flights next year. So whoever wins this gets an extra prize. So
what about Wexford, Kilkenny this weekend as well? Both teams looking to solidify a place in the quarterfinals as well. I'd say Davy at home really wants to beat Kilkenny.
There's a nice little rivalry between those 2 counties now as well, just with the way the results have gone in recent times. And Kilkenny are obviously chasing a place in terms of the top 4 as well. It's interesting because we know the permutations in many ways now for this weekend just because of what happened last weekend. So Clare, I think, are sitting at home hoping this isn't a draw. Outside that, they're probably happy enough for either team to win.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. Invariably, whoever has won the league game between Kilkenny and Wexford in the last couple of years has went on and beaten them in Championship or beaten them subsequently in a league knockout stage as well. So particularly important, I would say, for Wexford to get a result and to try and, I suppose, get that upper hand on Kilkenny. When they beat them 2 years ago, they had beaten them in the league up to that as well. So it's a big game for both, yeah.
I think as well Davy Fitzgerald is trying to style Darren Byrne as his new fullback as well, and maybe release Liam Ryan as well, so he doesn't always have to be the man marking the square. He's a great athlete. By the way, I think we have some reaction to the debate coming up on the screen. I didn't get sour, says Derek Lynch. I pointed out at Shane Saint is talking shit and is constantly bashing Clare. Why is this even a topic? To be fair, he's right, I do bash Clare. Cormac O'Malley, was Leicester a fluke? If yes, then Clare a fluke too. So
Leicester was not a fluke.
Was it not?
Leicester led the whole season.
Over what, 38 or 40 games? And to win as convincingly as they did, that's no fluke.
And of course, Man City were still in the same league as them. Liverpool were in the same league. It's not like they
should have won the league on the strength of their squad that season as well.
They had to beat their tip in Kilkenny.
Oof.
And I think that's the difference. We've got YouTube reaction coming up as well. Someone says, give it to Verney for the Galway 81 All-Ireland after 3 games. Comment alone. Buff, me thinks I like cake, says Buff will have a meltdown if Saint wins this debate.
You will be sentenced to deletion later on, no doubt about it.
You insubordinate mule.
One final question then, man, as well. Cork against Tipperary this weekend?
what you said about Cork or about Tip coming back from holidays is very, very interesting. Like it's like you'd imagine while they'd be training out there that they'd let their hair down a small bit as well too. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of frame of mind they're in this weekend. How bothered Liam Sheedy is with getting to getting another game in the knockout stages or whatever is another thing.
There's no consequences of losing, really. Is
no, and just on that as well. I was just reading earlier on in the week, with this 5th or 6th place playoff, this extra game, apparently there could be a coin toss for that now if the two teams don't want to play. So that there might
be the ultimate nonsense if that
happens. It would, yeah. And just another thing as well, with this whole fixture thing as well, like the onset thing is the effect that it could have on clubs.
Yeah.
Because just say, like, I think Cork are going to be in serious trouble. Their fixtures are going to be in serious trouble, club fixtures, if they get to the league final, and Waterford will be the same. So, like, you're going to have club players in a county almost wishing and hoping that their county doesn't get to a league final, which is farcical. So
that happens year on year as well.
Yeah, you know, that's not right either. Like, just because these boys have been waiting, like, you know yourself as well, you've been waiting and these club fixtures are set in stone, and then all of a sudden they're not set in stone, and it just upsets everything.
And I kind of hope the hurling doesn't get a bit lost over the next few weeks as well, because the weekend flips onto Paddy's weekend now just as a consequence, and the league finals are going to be on the same weekend as the football, where the football is probably going to get a lot of coverage, I would imagine. Hopefully that Division 1 final doesn't get a bit forgotten.
Yeah, I think the club finals are something we'll definitely focus on next week on both the hurling show and Gaelic football show. The Gaelic football show is every Wednesday at 12:30, and if you missed it yesterday, have a look at the tactics board stuff I did with Colin Nally. Excellent stuff, just kind of breaking down Dublin, breaking down modern tactics, tackling, all that. Really, really interesting stuff. And we'll be back again next Thursday here with the hurling show at 3 p.m. You can catch us on YouTube, Twitter, offtheball.com, Facebook, and we'll chat to you then. Thanks, lads.
Cheers.